Michael Reeves stands before his bathroom mirror at 5:30 a.m., studying the dark circles under his eyes. At 35, he embodies what society calls success: senior marketing executive, luxury apartment in Chicago, respectable investment portfolio. Yet something feels hollow, a void he can't name. His morning routine is calculated precision: pre-measured protein shake, 12 minutes on the treadmill, shower time to the second. In the office elevator, Michael overhears two colleagues discussing their weekend plans. "Just crushing some goals, man. No days off," one says proudly. Michael nods in agreement, though something inside him recoils. The corporate landscape stretches before him. Glass and steel, metrics and targets, a world where value is measured in productivity and achievement. That evening, a notification appears on his phone. His father has been hospitalized. Michael hasn't spoken to him in 3 years, not since their argument about Michael's divorce. He stares at the message, feeling nothing at first, then a wave of confusion about his emotional numbness. The hospital corridor feels endless. His father looks smaller somehow, diminished against white sheets. "You came," his father says, surprise in his voice. Michael nods, unsure why he's there. Their conversation is stilted, full of weather observations and sports statistics, the language men use when they can't speak their hearts. On his nightstand at home sits an unread book his therapist recommended months ago, Modern Man in Search of a Soul by Carl Jung. Michael had dismissed it as outdated philosophy, irrelevant to his data-driven world. Tonight, unable to sleep, he cracks it open, reading Jung's words. "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." Something in these words pierces Michael's carefully constructed facade. He thinks about his father, about himself, about the metrics by which he's measured his life. Success has been a game of accumulation: salary, title, possessions. But Jung speaks of individuation, of becoming whole rather than merely successful. Michael's phone buzzes with work emails, but for once he ignores them. He continues reading about the shadow, those parts of ourselves we hide, deny, or reject. Jung writes that what we resist most strongly in others often reflects disowned aspects of ourselves. Michael thinks of his contempt for his father's emotional vulnerability after his mother died, how he labeled it weakness. The city lights flicker outside his window as Michael confronts a disturbing thought. Perhaps his relentless drive, his emotional detachment, his obsession with strength and control? Perhaps these aren't signs of success, but of fear. Fear of the very vulnerability he despised in his father. Sleep eludes him as memories surface. His divorce, his ex-wife's parting words, "Living with you is like living with a robot programmed to succeed." He'd taken it as a compliment at the time. Now, in the quiet darkness of his apartment, surrounded by expensive things that bring no joy, Michael wonders what success really means. Morning finds him exhausted but strangely alert, as if seeing through new eyes. The familiar skyline of Chicago seems different somehow. Not just buildings and achievement, but a landscape of human striving, of collective dreams and fears. Something has shifted in Michael, a crack in the foundation of certainty upon which he's built his life. The following week passes in a blur of hospital visits and work obligations. Michael finds himself increasingly uncomfortable in meetings, noticing the performative nature of corporate masculinity, the subtle posturing, the veiled competitions, the emotional suppression disguised as professionalism. During a leadership conference, the keynote speaker presents slides on warrior mentality in business. "Crush the competition," he advises to enthusiastic applause. Michael shifts in his seat, Jung's words echoing. "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, their love is lacking." The disconnect is jarring. His father's condition stabilizes, creating space for actual conversation. "I was never the father you needed," his father admits one evening, the machines beeping softly in the background. "I thought being strong meant never showing weakness. My own father taught me that." Michael recognizes the inheritance. 3 generations of men equating masculinity with emotional silence. At home, Michael continues reading Jung, learning about archetypes, universal patterns in the collective unconscious. The warrior, the king, the lover, the magician, aspects of masculine energy that, when balanced, create wholeness. Modern masculinity, Michael realizes, often glorifies only the warrior while neglecting the others. In the office bathroom, Michael overhears a younger colleague on the phone. "No, can't make the kids' recital. Got to hustle, you know how it is." The man's forced laugh carries an undercurrent of pain that Michael now recognizes. He sees his younger self in this man, prioritizing achievement over connection, mistaking motion for meaning. That night, Michael dreams vividly. He stands in a vast hall of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of himself. The ambitious executive, the abandoned son, the failed husband, the frightened boy. In the center stands a figure that is both familiar and strange, radiating a calm strength unlike anything Michael has known. "Integrate," the figure says. "Don't eliminate." Michael wakes with tears on his face, something he hasn't experienced since childhood. Jung called dreams the direct expression of the unconscious mind, messages from parts of ourselves we've neglected or repressed. This dream feels significant, a summons to something authentic beneath the carefully crafted persona. At work, Michael declines an invitation to drinks with colleagues who plan to work hard, play hard, their code for competitive drinking and superficial connection. Instead, he visits a small bookstore he's passed 100 times but never entered. The elderly owner recommends several books on masculine psychology and spiritual growth. "Men today are starving for initiation," the bookstore owner says, "for meaningful rites of passage that transform boys into mature men. We've lost those rituals." Michael thinks about his own life transitions: college graduation, first job, marriage, divorce, all marked by external validation rather than internal transformation. Walking home through the city, Michael observes men around him. The aggressive posturing of young men in groups, the vacant stares of middle-aged men on commuter trains, the stooped resignation of elderly men on park benches. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suddenly feels tangible. These men are not just individuals, but carriers of cultural patterns, playing out scripts written long before them. 3 months pass. Michael has established a new routine: meditation before dawn, journaling, regular visits with his father, who is now in rehabilitation. Their conversations have deepened, moving beyond sports and weather into territory neither has explored before. Regrets, fears, hopes deferred. "I wanted to be different from my father," his dad confesses one afternoon. "He never said 'I love you,' not once. I promised myself I'd be different, but somewhere along the way..." He trails off. Michael nods, understanding the inheritance of silence, how patterns persist unless consciously broken. At work, changes are noticed. "You've gone soft," a colleague comments when Michael advocates for a more balanced approach to a high-pressure project. The accusation stings, triggering old fears about strength and weakness. That night, Michael writes in his journal about the comment, exploring his reaction, recognizing it as an encounter with his shadow. Jung wrote that the shadow isn't inherently negative. It contains not only repressed weaknesses but also positive qualities deemed unacceptable by family or society. For Michael, emotional sensitivity was cast into shadow early, labeled as weakness in the competitive male environments of sports and business. Michael joins a men's group that meets weekly in a community center downtown. The diversity surprises him: construction workers, professors, artists, business executives, all seeking authentic connection. They discuss Jung's concept of the persona, the social mask we wear, versus the authentic self beneath. "I've been playing a character my whole life," admits a successful surgeon in the group. "I realized I don't even know who I am without the white coat, without the status." Murmurs of recognition ripple through the circle. Michael feels less alone in his questioning. On a business trip to San Francisco, Michael visits a museum exhibition on indigenous masculine initiation rites. Photographs show young men undergoing challenging ordeals, supported by elder men, emerging transformed. The contrast with modern masculinity is stark. No elders guiding the way, no meaningful challenges that lead to wisdom, no community to witness transformation. That evening, Michael declines a client dinner to walk along the Pacific coast. The vastness of the ocean mirrors something expanding within him. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming one's unique self while remaining connected to humanity. The paradox resonates as Michael watches solitary figures and couples along the shoreline, separate yet sharing the same horizon. Back in Chicago, Michael notices changes in his responses to stress. When a major account threatens to leave, his former reaction would have been controlled anger followed by intensified work hours. Now he feels the fear beneath the anger, fear of inadequacy, of failure, of worthlessness. Emotions Jung would identify as universal human experiences rather than personal shortcomings. In his apartment, Michael creates a small ritual space, a shelf with meaningful objects, a photo of himself as a child, a stone from the Pacific, his grandfather's watch, books that have shifted his perspective. Jung emphasized the importance of ritual in connecting conscious and unconscious aspects of self. Each morning, Michael pauses here, setting intentions not just for achievement, but for awareness and authenticity. Winter settles over Chicago, mirroring an internal winter in Michael's life. The questioning of his values and identity leads to a period of depression, what Jung might call the dark night of the soul, a necessary descent before genuine transformation. The structures that once provided certainty now feel confining. His performance at work slips. The CEO calls him in for a course correction meeting. "We need the old Michael back," she says firmly, the results-driven team player. Michael nods politely but realizes he can never be that person again, not authentically. The question becomes whether he can create a new way of being effective while remaining true to his evolving self. At the men's group, Michael shares his professional dilemma. Jung talked about holding the tension of opposites, offers a professor in the circle. Maybe success and authenticity aren't mutually exclusive. Maybe the integration of both creates something more powerful than either alone. The concept follows Michael throughout the week. His father is discharged from rehabilitation, moving into an assisted living facility. Helping him settle in, Michael discovers a box of old photographs. His father as a young man, laughing openly, displaying an emotional freedom Michael never witnessed. "What happened to that guy?" Michael asked gently. His father's eyes grow distant. "Life happened. Responsibilities, expectations." In therapy, Michael explores Jung's concept of the anima, the feminine aspect within every man. His therapist explains how disconnection from this energy can lead to emotional rigidity, excessive rationality, and difficulty with intimacy. Michael recognizes these patterns in himself, in his failed marriage, in his approach to relationships. A dream recurs several nights in a row. Michael stands before two doors. Behind one, he hears the sounds of celebration and achievement. Behind the other, the quieter sounds of conversation and laughter. Each time he approaches the second door, he wakes up. His therapist suggests the dream represents his current threshold, the choice between external success and meaningful connection. At work, Michael begins experimenting with a different leadership style. More collaborative, more emotionally attuned, more authentic. Some team members respond positively. Others seem uncomfortable with the change. "You're asking us to bring our whole selves to work," one colleague observes. "But what if we don't know who that is?" The question haunts Michael because it reflects his own journey. Jung wrote that most people become who they are by accident, unconsciously adapting to expectations rather than consciously choosing their path. Individuation requires intention, the courage to examine inherited values and choose which to keep. Spring arrives, bringing with it a sense of possibility. Michael's father shows him an old journal he kept briefly in his 30s, entries revealing similar questions about identity and purpose. "I never followed through," his father says with regret. "I got scared and doubled down on what I knew: work, achievement, emotional distance. Don't make my mistake." The conversation becomes a turning point. Michael realizes that questioning the dominant narrative of masculinity isn't weakness but courage. perhaps the very courage that traditional masculinity claims to value. Jung described this as the hero's journey, not the external conquest of enemies, but the internal conquest of fear, the integration of disowned aspects of self. 1 year after his father's hospitalization, Michael stands at a crossroads. He's been offered a promotion that would cement his corporate success, but require a return to his former approach to work and life. Simultaneously, an opportunity arises to join a startup focused on emotional intelligence and leadership. Less prestige, less money, but aligned with his evolving values. In the men's group, now a vital part of his life, Michael shares his dilemma. Jung talked about vocation versus career, says one of the elders. A career is what you're paid for. A vocation is what you're made for. The distinction clarifies something for Michael. He's been pursuing a career, but longing for a vocation. Michael visits his father, now settled into assisted living, but declining physically. They sit in the garden, talking about legacy. I measured success by what I accumulated, his father reflects. I should have measured it by what I gave, by who I became, by how I loved. The words land with the weight of lived experience. That night, Michael dreams of the Hall of Mirrors again, but this time, the reflections are integrated into a single image. Complex, multifaceted, but unified. The central figure nods in approval. Jung described this as the self-archetype, the organizing center of the psyche that emerges when fragmented aspects are acknowledged and integrated. Michael makes his decision, choosing the path of alignment over advancement. Some colleagues express confusion or judgment. Others confess quiet envy. You're doing what many of us wish we had the courage to do, admits his closest work friend during a goodbye lunch. In his new role, Michael begins developing programs that bring Jungian concepts into leadership training, teaching executives about shadow integration, emotional intelligence, and authentic communication. The work feels meaningful in a way his previous success never did, connecting his own journey with something larger. His relationship with his father deepens in the elder man's final months. They speak of things long unspoken: disappointments, regrets, moments of pride, hopes for redemption. Jung emphasized the importance of reconciliation with the father figure, both literal and symbolic, as essential to mature masculine development. Michael begins mentoring younger men, both professionally and through volunteer work with fatherless teens. Jung wrote that each generation needs guides to help navigate the passage to authentic maturity. Michael finds that sharing his journey, his mistakes, his awakening, his ongoing questions, creates connections more meaningful than any he experienced in his former life. His father passes peacefully in autumn, Michael holding his hand. At the funeral, Michael speaks not of achievements but of transformation, how his father found the courage to change even late in life, to question inherited patterns, to reach for authentic connection. He taught me that it's never too late to become who you might have been, Michael tells the gathered mourners. In the year that follows, Michael continues his own individuation journey, dating with new emotional awareness, deepening friendships, contributing to his community, finding balance between achievement and connection. Jung described individuation not as a destination, but as a lifelong process of becoming increasingly whole while remaining engaged with the world. On the anniversary of his first reading Jung, Michael returns to the bookstore where his conscious journey began. The elderly owner recognizes him, asks about his path. Michael shares the essence of his transformation, how questioning cultural definitions of masculinity led to greater authenticity and, paradoxically, to a deeper strength than he'd known before. Jung believed that what we resist persists, and what we embrace transforms, the bookstore owner says, nodding with approval. By facing your shadow, you've become more whole. Outside, the city continues its rhythm, men and women rushing toward futures they rarely question. But something has changed in Michael's relationship to this flow. He moves within it but is no longer carried unconsciously by it. In Jung's terms, he has become an individual, connected to collective humanity but consciously choosing his own path. As Michael's journey comes to a close, we're left to wonder about our own paths through the modern landscape of masculinity. In a world that often reduces men to their productivity, their stoicism, their ability to conquer and compete, Jung offers us a different vision, one of wholeness rather than fragmentation, integration rather than suppression. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of our time is not that men suffer, but that they suffer believing they are alone in their suffering. Behind the masks of achievement, behind the armor of indifference, behind the walls of emotional restraint, there beats a heart longing for meaning, for connection, for authenticity. The journey toward wholeness is not about rejecting strength, but about redefining it. True strength lies not in the absence of vulnerability, but in the courage to embrace it. Not in emotional detachment, but in emotional intelligence. Not in conformity to cultural expectations, but in the bravery to question them. Jung understood that the most profound revolution is not external, but internal. The quiet transformation that occurs when a man looks into the abyss of his own shadow, and instead of turning away, steps forward to integrate what he finds there. This is the hero's journey of our time. Not slaying dragons, but befriending them, recognizing them as disowned parts of ourselves. In Michael's story, we see a reflection of our collective yearning to be successful without being hollow, to be strong without being rigid, to be masculine without being limited. His journey reminds us that it's never too late to question the path we're on, never too late to heal the wounds we've inherited, never too late to become who we might have been. As you reflect on your own journey, remember Jung's profound insight. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In a world of endless distraction and external validation, perhaps no act is more revolutionary, more healing, more necessary than the simple courage to be authentically yourself. If Michael's journey resonated with you, if you've felt the tension between society's expectations and your authentic self, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What parts of the modern masculine experience ring true for you? What aspects of Jung's psychology might offer healing for the challenges men face today? This exploration of masculine psychology is just the beginning. If you'd like to join me on this journey of psychological insight and authentic living, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Each week, we'll dive deeper into the wisdom of Jung and other psychological pioneers who offer maps for navigating our complex inner landscapes. From the depths of my heart, thank you for sharing this time of reflection with me. Your presence and attention are truly the most valuable gifts in our distracted world. See you in the next video.